Live. Okay. Alrighty. Good evening, everyone. This is attorney Robyn McCoy with Political Coffee with Robyn and Tracey. And we have our honored guest, Francis Walters, who's with the Washtenaw County Prosecutor's Office. And today I have the perfect apropos mug. I have Slow Down, which Nurse Pam will be happy. My mom, Nurse Pam, kept telling me, you need to slow down. You're always running. And I'm drinking, my tea is, what do I have today? I have the Breathe Deep tea, and I have, it's also some other herbal tea in there with lemon and honey. Tracey, what about you?
Well, good evening, everybody. I hope everybody's doing great. This is our second week doing a weekday show, and thanks so much for watching us. And I, today, Robyn, have brought my Senate mug because I'm still asking everybody out there in America to call their senators to support the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act of 2021. I know you might have heard about Attorney Bakari Sellers reading Senator Kristen Sinema and Senator Joe Manchin's office numbers on the air, and I've got their numbers right here on this mug. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But inside my mug, I have French vanilla coffee, which I really need for an early evening pick me up. And I can't wait to dive right into it with Francis Walters, who spent a dozen years of her life in the innocence field. And we're very honored and pleased to have her join us today. Hi, Francis. How are you doing? And what did you bring in your mug?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me. I'm not a big mug collector, but I have one with my 3 kids on there.
Oh, that's
They're
cute.
4, 6, and 8.
That's sweet.
Yes, and Francis, so I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I'm pretty boring. I just have the water in my mug.
Well, water's good.
Water is good. Water's always a good thing.
Did you have that mug specially made, or was that like a Mother's Day gift? Because we got Mother's Day coming up next month.
Yeah, I actually had it made for my mom. We actually, when we moved back to Ann Arbor, we moved in with my parents. And so it was a thanks for letting us all crash here type of gift for them.
Cool. Very nice. And I love your background. I mean, that looks like
Michigan, the quad.
Yeah, it looks like the quad. Is that it?
Yeah. I mean, one of the nice things is all the institutions have released nice Zoom backgrounds, so you can hide kind of the mess that's behind.
Oh, it looks great. I need to get one.
Beautiful.
So for the audience, though, Francis, I'm going to go over your bio so everybody knows, you know, who you are, your background. So Francis is interim director of the Conviction, Integrity, and Expungement Unit in the Washtenaw County Prosecutor's Office. Prior to joining the Washtenaw County Prosecutor's Office, Francis was the legal director at the Mid-Atlantic Innocence Project, where she supervised, investigated, and litigated DNA and non-DNA cases. Francis has worked in the innocence field for over 12 years, having started as a member of the inaugural class of the Michigan Innocence Clinic at the University of Michigan Law School, where she graduated magna cum laude and Order of the Coif. She continued her work on innocence cases after joining the law firm of Williams and Connolly, successfully seeing her first MIC case through to exoneration. Prior to her legal career, Francis earned a BS in engineering from Princeton University and was a teacher for 6 years. Oh, that's great. I teach, including as a lecturer at the University of Cape Town, which is also awesome. I've been there. Francis is a member of the Michigan, DC, and Maryland bars. So again, welcome, Francis. And why don't you tell the audience, like, what motivated you to get into this, like, the innocence field and now the expungement field?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't take a very direct path. I never thought I was going to be a lawyer, but when I went to Cape Town for a couple of years, I was teaching there at the University of Cape Town, and it was a program where they allowed students into universities, and it was actually a law that universities had to admit students they might not have in the past, but it was an effort to make up for post-apartheid gaps in education. And so I taught that an extra year. So these students who were admitted under the law, they had to take an extra year to catch up on math and other subject areas. And so I was there for that. And it really struck me that the work I was doing, I was able to do because of this law. And that's kind of what spurred me into thinking maybe I want to do something different. I do enjoy teaching. And I know, Robyn, you teach really interesting courses, it looked like. And so I just thought maybe there was something else, a different approach I could take. And I continued teaching for a while in the States. And while I really enjoyed it, I just kept being tugged, and I felt like there was something more I wanted to do. And when I went to law school, I initially thought that I wanted to do child advocacy law because I saw my students at school, they had so much going on at home that I couldn't really assist with. And so I felt like that was an area maybe where I could help outside of school. But then I went to law school, and my 2L year, the Innocence Clinic started at Michigan. I decided, hey, like, I've never tried criminal law. I've already made a career change. Why don't I try this out? And I fell in love. It was amazing. I worked, Dave Moran was my professor, as was now Chief Justice Bridget McCormick.
Oh,
And yeah.
they were my professor. Well, I had not Moran, but I had Bridget McCormick was one of my professors.
Okay. Yeah. No. And I mean, I went to a law firm for a little while just to make sure. I tried out civil law and some other areas, and I kept returning to innocence work. And so I was very fortunate when the Mid-Atlantic Innocence Project had a position open up. And so I joined them.
Oh, that's
That's
wonderful.
interesting. That's interesting, Frances, your background. And so, I mean, what do you think actually drew you to that area of the law, though? You know, the innocence projects have really put a dent on helping innocent people. You know, and when I hear Innocence Project, I do think Professor Moran, and I think of, you know, Barry Scheck. But what do you think it was about you or your personality that drew you to this field, this innocence field?
Yeah, I mean, it all came together. You know, I really enjoyed working directly with clients, learning their stories. And oftentimes, you know, a lot of the people that wrote for help said, I just want somebody to listen. And so I was glad to be that ear and to be there. I enjoyed the investigation piece. I like going out and digging deeper into the records and talking to people, seeing if there's physical evidence. I have a fairly strong science background, and so even the forensic science aspects drew me to the work. And I actually do enjoy writing briefs and doing legal research and writing. So all those pieces seem to come together here. And so and obviously, you know, an innocent person being incarcerated is one of the worst wrongs that our society can commit. And so it's an important area for me. And I've really enjoyed it. And I'm actually excited to have expanded working into the expungement field as well. Because, you know, when I was doing innocence work, oftentimes we couldn't find the new evidence you needed to prove someone was innocent. So we often had to close cases. And it just felt like we were leaving a lot of people kind of out to dry a little bit. And so I really appreciate having the opportunity to help people in other areas, even if it's not necessarily like an innocence claim or where we can prove that someone is innocent.
That's fantastic. It seems like you have, no, it doesn't seem like, it is the fact that you have all of the qualities and characteristics of an individual who's just perfect for your new role in Washtenaw County as the interim director of the, I see below your face there, CIEU. That's a nice short way of saying it, but Conviction, Integrity, and Expungement Unit Director. Congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
So
congratulations.
tell us about that unit. It's new, right? Relatively new?
Yeah, so fortunately, the county commission was able to fund a temporary position to get the unit up and running. So when Ellie got into office, he was able to post this position, I think even before he got into office, and interviewed and was able to bring someone in. And I'm very fortunate and I'm grateful that I was that person, to start looking at policies, putting in place best practices so that our office unit, once it was ready to get up and running, could go full steam ahead. And so my temporary funding is through next month. Hopefully, we hope the commission votes to make it permanent next month. But, you know, that way I was able to start in February. As soon as the expungement laws went into effect, the set aside laws on April 11th, we already kind of had a procedure in place. We were talking to, we have several partners, the Michigan Advocacy Program with their legal services for South Central Michigan, and Michigan Works Southeast. We've been able to meet with them along with the city of Ann Arbor, and kind of talk through how we were all going to work together to make this work. Oh, and I can't forget the Washtenaw County Public Defender's Office as well. And so we've had meetings and we've been up and running, and over the last couple of weeks, we've been working together to make sure we get everyone's records that they need to apply, and to figure out if people are eligible and to help them in any way we can. And hopefully the same will be true if we get fully funded when our conviction integrity part of our unit also can fully get up and running.
Right,
When
and
will
I
you
anticipate
find
I'll
out?
be seeing you because I've got it. You know, we've been doing it covering expungements, but now the law is in effect. So I've got folks for Washtenaw County, Wayne, some Oakland. So I probably will be seeing you or interacting in some way or form, because now you have more people that are eligible, and it's just a matter of getting the paperwork process and getting attorneys to help them to get their, you know, to try to redeem themselves.
Yeah. And if there are questions, I know sometimes those iChats that get run, you know, I ran one for somebody and one of their convictions appeared twice for some reason. And so, you know, we're able to help clear that up. Or if there are other areas, Robyn, where you see the prosecutor's office can help clarify things that might be a mistake. Yeah, we're very open and happy to help in that area.
Okay. And I think that, again, that makes a world of difference. I know I have a colleague out there, Sandra White. We were doing the expungement forums with Judge Thomas, and she was saying sometimes she was coming in the old prosecutor's office and there was a lot of rigidity. There was resistance, and that wasn't very helpful when we were trying to help people. So it does make, it makes a big difference to have your office and also the Attorney General out there willing to help, you know, clear up folks' records for people who are eligible. So yeah, that's great. Tracey, you were going to say something earlier.
Well, I'm sorry, I had to check my mute, make sure it was unmuted, but I'm accompanied this afternoon by my faithful doggie, Bella, sitting over there, and sometimes she starts barking. So apologies in advance if she does. But back to you, Francis. On the topic of expungement, since we're on that right now, if someone wants to inquire about getting an expungement through the Washtenaw County Prosecutor's Office, how do they begin that application process? How do they connect up?
Yeah, so I shortened my title to CIEU because we have an email address that's just cieu@washtenaw.org.
Okay.
And that is the best way for people to reach us. If people don't have the email address, they have called our office, and you know, people there that answer the phone are able to direct people to that email address. That's just the easiest way, because you know, we need to make sure that people who write us understand that we're not their lawyers. As prosecutor, because I'm in the prosecutor's office, we can't represent people. And so what I try to explain to them, and it's easiest, obviously, when it's written, to say, what we're doing is we're helping gather your records so that an application can be put together. And if needed, once we have, for example, the ICHAP pulled to look for eligibility, and we are helping get the certified court records. They need the order of conviction for each case. We're trying to help collect those and streamline that. And once we have those, then either we can refer them to an attorney in the community, or if they qualify for legal services of South Central Michigan to represent them, then we can refer them there. So we're trying to make it so that we're assisting and streamlining everything, making things more efficient in the beginning stages, so that when a person goes to an attorney or goes to legal services, they have everything kind of together to make it easier for that application to be submitted.
So this isn't self-help or pro se or improper. The people who do contact the Washtenaw County Prosecutor's Office, they can get a referral to an attorney who could assist them further potentially.
Yes.
Oh, that's
yes,
fantastic.
That's the idea. I mean, once they have the records, people can apply pro per, but as you and Robyn both know, it's still a fairly complicated process.
It is, even for lawyers, you know, and even for lawyers with the new rollout of the Michigan's Clean Slate Law, it's a little complex. We had, actually, that's an understatement. It's very complex. We had State Representative David LeGrand on a couple of weeks back, and you know, he's really been dubbed the architect of that new law, and you know, he admits it's rather, you know, it's complex. So I'm glad there's help out there for people. And how are you maintaining, how are you referring people to lawyers? Are you maintaining some sort of database or referral list? How are you getting the lawyers who are raising their hands to help people at maybe a low cost or reduced rate, pro bono?
Yeah, that's the piece I am building still right now. And so I am going to be doing some outreach to local attorneys and seeing if they want to be included on a sort of referral list. Right now, I think a lot of the inquiries that people probably can qualify for either legal services, or the public defender's office also can help represent. But where people might have a little bit more ability to pay, we want to be able to give them other referrals to people in the community, because I mean, Robyn, you've been doing great work. You've been going out and doing kind of the fairs, or I don't know what you're calling them, but
the forums, we've done
yes.
more educational forums and some fairs. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know you had like Nick Rommel on last month, and I know he's doing great work too. So, you know, we just want to make sure everyone has the help they need.
Yeah, well, we did do, Tracey and I co-hosted that was the event with Nick Rommel and some of the politicians and the lawyers. And then I participated in a virtual fair on April 10th. And so what we did is, it was a former state rep, Sherry Gay Degnogle, did an in-person educational part of it. And then there were those of us lawyers who volunteered to do pre-screening eligibility. And then some of us attorneys agreed to take on a couple of people pro bono. And then, you know, and then I have been in that process of matching other attorneys up with folks that can't afford a lawyer. And so for Wayne County, they have, you may be aware of this already, they have Clean Slate and they have Lakeshore Legal Aid, but I've already heard that they're filled to capacity. They're trying to recruit more attorneys. And then, so I've been in that position too, is trying to recruit attorneys. And it's like, I feel like the criminal defense attorneys, that we're the most qualified to do it because we know the laws. But if we're already doing indigent work, it's kind of hard to ask us to do a lot of pro bono. And that's why I was like trying to look at more corporate attorneys who maybe they have a big salary, they can get they get trained and they can agree to do a certain amount a month, you know.
Yeah, I think that's the same. Michigan Advocacy Program are also trying to identify pro bono attorneys to assist in all various counties, not just Washtenaw County. And I know that is an issue that people are running into. And so we're hoping if we can spread out the work, that maybe, you know, if we can lighten the load a little bit, then maybe there will be more people willing. I do know gathering the certified court orders and things like that has been kind of a barrier for pro bono attorneys. And so if we can do that part, and then just the application and maybe a hearing, and I know in Wayne County, they're doing some of this by stipulation now, but if there's a hearing, then maybe that's a lighter load that somebody can handle.
That's great. And since the CIEU open, have you been getting, has there been an avalanche of people calling you, contacting you for help?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it an avalanche. It's been pretty steady.
Okay.
I'm grateful that like for a decent number, we have like a dozen people who have contacted us. I'm still getting used to like reviewing everything and making sure I'm not dropping anything or letting anything through the cracks, and working out kind of the payments for, there are little pieces when we have to pay the court for the court records. We're trying to smooth that out, so I'm glad it hasn't been too heavy a stream right now, so that we can work out these kinks. But one of the things we're gonna do is Ellie's been trying to get out information on social media. We're going to do kind of a day of service where we go out into the community and give out pamphlets, and where people can go to our website and learn more about whether they're eligible, what services we're offering, what services our partners are offering. And so we're trying to get the word out, because I think one of the issues is that a lot of people don't even know that they're now newly eligible still.
I agree. I think that the media's been doing an okay job with talking about, the rollout of the new clean slate law as it pertains to expungements. But I think you're right on target. A lot of people just don't know that there's help available. There was that burst, April the 12th, and then you don't really hear that much. So it is a job, to keep that top of the mind for the public so they can realize that there is help out there for them. So kudos to you and Prosecutor Ellie Savitt for arranging for this day of service. And social media is a great tool to amplify that message as well. Do you find that social media is really helpful to your unit?
Yeah, I think several people found us, like they wrote us directly to our email, and I think that was from social media, and hopefully that makes it easy for them to then pass on information to people they know. And a lot of the communications I'm getting initially are just like, I don't even know where to start. Can you, I know I have something old on my record, like, can you help me? And so, we're really happy even just to get people started in the process, even if they don't eventually want us to be the ones to gather their records.
Yeah, and I did put your information, the email that you referenced, in the chat, because we're on YouTube, but on my Facebook page. And yeah, I have Tracey and I, we were doing, I've been doing the forums for a number of years, and then last year we started doing forums with the politicians, as we knew that the law was subject to change. And so we did we did some programming with the late state representative Isaac Robinson, and former state rep Mary Waters, and then David LeGrand. And we did one where Tracey talked about, she talked about juvenile expungements, and then I talked about adult expungements. And so I would say I've been flooded with calls probably the last couple of years, but even more recently, I'm getting like 3 to 5 calls every day. And it's like, some people have money, some people don't. And so I'm pulling everybody's iChats. And I have an assistant, thankfully, Ed out there, who's my assistant, who's helping, Ed Dance. He's actually Ellie's former deputy director, campaign director. But
shout out to Edward Dance.
Yeah, and I'll probably be looking at, one of my friends suggested I connect with some of the students from U of M, our alma mater, because I'm just like, this is a lot. There's a lot of folks, and but we would definitely want to help people, because when I've interviewed people, even in the past, you would interview a lot of people, and most people were not eligible, because it was before it was the 1 felony and the 2 misdemeanors. So it was really sad, because you're turning people away. Judge Thomas, my mentor, we call her the expungement queen. She would hand out materials for felony friendly jobs and talk about entrepreneurship, because you just feel sad to turn people away, because she would actually hand out the application. And now under the new law, you have the 3 felonies, unlimited misdemeanors, but it doesn't mean, that every misdemeanor, every felony is eligible. But I'm being flooded with calls calls. And that's why I've been putting together a referral list for attorneys that will do expungements for a reasonable rate. And then I'm getting, it's a smaller list of attorneys that are saying they'll do it pro bono, because most attorneys that are in private practice are saying to me, look, I've got to eat. So, you know, I think that there's definitely, Tracey and I interviewed one of the county commissioners in Wayne County, but I would definitely like to see it in Washtenaw County as well, like more funding being put in place to pay attorneys to handle expungements for people so that they can get jobs or advance on their jobs.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's super important. And I know, like, for example, Michigan Works has gotten several grants, but you know, there's a limit. And if given the number of people who are newly eligible, we do need to find other sources to be able to assist people. I mean, by statute, there's a $50 fee to the Michigan State Police, and that has to be covered somehow. And so, yeah, no, you know, all the work you're doing, Robyn and Tracey, is really important and very necessary. And I may be calling you Robyn to talk through some of this.
Yeah,
I
Robyn,
you're gonna be
she's
doing some
all the
fundraising.
heavy lifting.
But yeah, I mean,
Robyn's doing all the
sorry.
heavy lifting. Yeah,
but
I was saying Robyn's doing all
sorry,
heavy
Tracey,
lifting.
go ahead.
Yeah, well, Tracey has committed to doing juvenile. So we got a commitment. She said she'll do
good.
juvenile.
Excellent.
So I'll do some adult, Tracey will do some juvenile. So yeah.
Yeah, I stick to what I know. I exclusively practice in the on the domestic relations docket and the family courts. And so, you know, you mentioned neglect and abuse cases earlier. That's strictly what I do on the juvenile court side, and I do represent juveniles in connection with juvenile justice. But I've got to say, I really do not get contacted very often about juvenile expungements. And I always remind my clients, you know, we can get this expunged for you. You know, give them my business card. I urge them to contact me. And I never hear back from them. So I find that interesting. You know, I just wonder, Frances, from a national perspective, you know, Michigan is now the leader when it comes to the rollout of the clean slate law, followed by California and New Jersey, as I understand. And then with respect to these conviction integrity units, that's also a trend I noticed locally. Wayne County has a conviction integrity unit. Of course, Washtenaw County, your county does. I read a media article the other day that Oakland County is now rolling out their own version of the Clean Slate project that was launched in Detroit. Do you think that this is a trend that will continue in terms of criminal justice reform and, you know, restoring people? What do you think?
I really hope so. In DC, they were doing a lot of work around resentencing, especially of people who committed crimes. And now it's official. They expanded it to 25 or younger. And so, but like for people who have already served their time, resentencing is not really a solution. And so I think that expungements and helping people get these set aside and so that they can get employment and housing, stable housing and things like that. I mean, it's really important. We know that we as a country have over prosecuted and over sentenced people. And so one of the ways to address that is to make sure that we have laws in place to allow people to set their convictions aside when they have shown that they've done everything right after that point. And so I do think it's really important.
Well, you have an interesting perspective, I imagine, because I find it fascinating that you lectured at the University of Cape Town. I myself have never been to South Africa, but so with that in mind, why do you think America does such an awful job, you know, has such a problem with incarcerating the innocent, especially when you compare, you know, we're supposed to be the super country, you know, the world leader. Why do we do such a terrible job, you know, especially compared to other countries, in particular Europe?
That's a really good question. One of the things we were really looking at the Mid-Atlantic Innocence Project before I left there, we had our investigator trained in the peace method, which is a different kind of interviewing of witnesses and suspects. As you both probably know, in the US for a very long time, and even still, the remnants of the Reed method is still used. And that's a very that is a guilt-focused method. It's an interrogation, it's not an interview. And in Europe, they have adopted this peace method, and they've actually found that they've been able to get more reliable information from both witnesses and suspects using this method. And it's very much more of like a rapport building, conversational way. And for some reason, I think here we thought really that the way to get people to talk is to put pressure on them. And use threats and promises and to get people to, well, for suspects, when you suspect someone, you're expecting a confession. And that really is focused on people who you believe, and you have to be right, that the person's guilty. And so oftentimes you don't have the right person. And so using this method is not very effective. And they have found that to be true also with witnesses, where you're pressuring them and you expect them to say or give a particular statement. If that is actually what they know, that's great. But if the person actually does not know anything, or what they know does not line up with what the law enforcement agencies believe, then it is not a reliable method to use. And so that was one of the areas where we really were looking at making sure our methods were aligned with a more reliable interviewing method, so that, you know, we weren't then getting false information.
Right.
Because that's often what I have happen is I have clients that after they say, that's not what I said in the statement. I didn't say that. They twisted my words. That's what, you know, I'm sure Tracey, you've done criminal defense too. You often hear the client saying, that's not what happened. That's not what I said.
Then the cops say, I got him on tape, man. Okay, you can, you know, here's a discovery. All right. You know, but that was because my client had, usually they're like, were 17-year-olds before they raised the age, and they had been away, you know, from home for hours, and they were hungry and they were tired, and they'd say anything to get the heck out of the, you know, the lockup, you know. So and by that time it's just the whole case goes to pot. You know, there are some things that, as you know, you can do to remedy it, but yeah, so yeah. But you know, Francis, I have another question for you. I really want to get your take on this this article that came out recently about you know, Michigan needing $7 million to pay the wrongfully convicted in order to avoid going into debt. You know, the Wrongful Imprisonment Compensation Act was enacted in 2016, and it requires the state to pay individuals who are wrongfully convicted $50,000 for each year they spent in prison. I mean, what do you make of all of this?
I mean, it's really hard. You're weighing somebody's life where they spent a number of years wrongfully incarcerated. How do you put a number on that? And I know in Virginia, there is a cap on how much you can compensate a person outside of like a civil lawsuit. So, you know, I mean, I think Michigan is right in not creating these limits, these artificial limits, when they have wrongfully taken a large portion of someone's life. But I mean, I understand budgets, and it's a difficult thing.
How do you pay for it?
Yeah, I mean, that is the big question. This is why I'm not a legislator, right? But you know, I think people are owed. You can't make up for what has been taken away from people, and hopefully, I mean, this will make people think twice about policies that are in place and how do we avoid this in the future. I mean, hopefully that is the outcome, rather than a focus on the money that is going where, I mean, it should go to the people who are wrongfully convicted. And so I think that is a balance that needs to be struck. And I don't envy the legislators having to figure out where this is coming from. But at a certain point, for certain areas, I don't think we can, money shouldn't drive the remedies that are available.
Right. I think
Yeah,
that's
they're gonna have
what
to get
because of that, I've seen that. I think that's what drives me to do more preventative work. Like I've done expungement, I still do expungement, but I do programming on what to do when stopped by the police, so I can try to encourage especially the young people to avoid situations where they get caught up. And and because like Tracey and I typically see people after they've given away most of their rights, and we're in damage control mode. So I really would prefer that people not give up their rights. And I mean, if they're innocent, that they not be charged. And I know Tracey and I have interviewed guests, and one of the hot topics has been facial recognition technology. And they had that Robert Williams, that guy that he was wrongfully identified and incarcerated. And I mean, do you have a position, or does your office have a position on the facial recognition technology?
I mean, it's been discussed. There's hasn't been an official policy published. I've actually been trying to follow the developments in Virginia. They passed a law where a law enforcement agency can't start using facial recognition without the state legislature approval. And so that just passed there. I don't think it has been signed into law yet, but so I mean, lots of people are looking into this. And I think where until they can show that the programs are not racially biased in a way where they are misidentifying people of specific ethnicities and races, like as a wrongful, as someone working on conviction integrity, it just seems like that it needs to be very carefully looked at before any law enforcement agency implements it and a prosecutor's office relies on it. So that's not the official stance of our office, but in my looking at the issues, that's where I'm landing right now, given the outcomes that are being, I guess, researched right now, and the publication of what they have found about the particular facial recognition programs that are being used.
Okay. And then I see that the Supreme Court, another topic that Tracey and I have talked to our guest about is, carrying a concealed weapon. There's issues in Wayne County. There's a lawsuit against their office, the sheriff's office, because their office hasn't been readily processing CPL licensing. And but there is a Supreme Court case. They're supposed to evaluate the issue of carrying a concealed weapon and the Second Amendment. And do you have a position on that? Like, how do you think that people that carrying concealed weapon is constitutional, having those kind of statutes? Or
I haven't read enough about that. I know it's a challenge of a New York law, right? That's been around for quite some time. But I would say that I would need to read about that a little bit more. That's not an area I'm totally familiar with.
Right.
Yeah, that is a little off topic, but I would like to comment on that case out of New York. It appears that the U.S. Supreme Court hasn't taken up a case on gun rights in about 11 years, and many pundits and legal experts are saying that this could signal that there will actually be an expansion of gun rights. Interestingly enough, in an America where it just seems like there are shootings every day, which is very ironic. Now, I myself am a proponent of the Second Amendment. I totally believe in it, but as a lawyer, I just find it fascinating. But Frances, I want to take you back to your interesting time in South Africa at the University of Cape Town when you were a guest lecturer. And this is a two-part question. What were some of the topics that you lectured on? And how would you compare the South African system of justice compared to the American system of justice, which, is very flawed?
Yeah, so my focus was teaching numeracy, so literacy with numbers and math. And so I was
Literacy?
very,
Oh,
yeah, numeracy. And so I was very focused in that area with the students, trying to get them caught up to a point. We also taught them Excel so that they had some computer literacy as well, things that maybe they weren't able to get in their schools that were still suffering from apartheid effects. And so it was a very technical area, but it was meaningful in that, there were students who had come who had never seen a computer before. And so
And when were you there? When were you in Cape Town?
I was there from January 2002 to the end of 2003.
Oh, okay, because I was there in 1999, and I took a class. I wonder if you may have taken a class too. I took a class on constitutionalism in South Africa with.
I took that later. Yep.
Oh, you did? Okay, with
Judge,
Carthy Governor and David
Yes.
Chambers. Yes, I love that class. And then there were supposed to be 15 of us that went to South Africa, and it ended up being 12 because they had, U.S. News and World Report, they nominated Johannesburg, one of the most dangerous cities in the world.
Yeah.
And my parents were freaking out. My dad was freaking out. And he's like, how are you going to go? He was offering me going to France. I studied in France in college. And he's like, you're my investment. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to Johannesburg. I'm going to Pretoria. I went to Pretoria and I went to Cape Town. And I said, he's like, you can't go. You're my investment. I said, well, your investment's about to go international. And I loved being there. The people there, I don't know if it was the same when you were there, but the people had such hope and such vision about what could happen in South Africa. Like when I was there, and Becky was the president. Like, who was the president when you were there?
Yeah, it was Thabo Mbeki.
Mbeki? Okay.
Yeah.
But Frances, you said that you lectured on literacy, but in the United States, there is a connection between literacy and school performance and what they call the school to prison pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
And were there any parallels there in Cape Town and South Africa with that? I mean, I know it's another country, a completely different system, but we've got it like this in America, where this third grade reading law, if children are reading at a certain level, by the time they reach third grade, they're trying to figure out how many prison beds they're gonna create for these kids. I think that's really appalling, quite frankly. So was there any intersection there that you found when you were lecturing in Cape Town on literacy?
Well, we also worked with adults, and what we saw is, as Robyn pointed out, in South Africa, the crime rates are really high. There was lots of violent crime, and a lot of that was tied to income inequality. People were still living in shacks. It was really tied to poverty. And so I do think there are several parallels. And so this program and that law, which allowed students to go to university when perhaps they wouldn't have been admitted otherwise, it was really trying to address that, to help people get the skills they needed to get a better job, much like we're trying to do with these expungements, but I mean, on a very extreme scale there. And so helping people so that, if they didn't get the math education or the reading education, literacy education, that they would have those skills so they could apply for specific jobs that required that, so that they could get that promotion. And maybe move their family out of the townships where there was extreme poverty. So I mean, there are direct parallels to what was going on in South Africa.
Yeah, I would say in some ways when the work I've done in Detroit, I see, you know, because I had always had a dream about working with the United Nations, but then as I worked in Detroit in the juvenile court, the criminal court, I'm like, this is like working in a third world country, some of the conditions that are here. I know in South Africa in 99, when I was there, they were still trying to get like basic water, electricity into the shanty towns. And like you were talking about, they were giving educational opportunities to you know, to the Black folk, to the colored, you don't say, I mean, you say colored over there, you don't say color over here, it's different. The colored folk, all the oppressed people, Indian folk, they were trying to give opportunities to people who didn't have it. And you had a system where, you know, the Blacks had the political power, but the white people still had economic power, and the white people tended to be more educated than the Black folk. And I remember I was in Stellenbosch, and it was a woman who was saying, she was a white woman, and she had a colored or Black maid, right? And she was saying, before apartheid, she said, before it was apartheid for the Blacks, and now it's apartheid for the whites. But she's saying that, and she lives in a big house, and she got a Black maid, and I was just sitting there like, what is she talking about? I was just like, what is it? You know, but you know, here, that's what I look at with this expungement. When you know, just, we did it on April 10th. Some of us lawyers volunteered, and we're talking to people, and you're hearing their stories about how they apply for a job, and they're like, it's a common refrain. I applied for a job, I got a job, and then they're like, well, then the record came up and they had to let me go. Or I was, you know, a number of people said, okay, I have had a job for a number of years and I've tried to advance into management, and I couldn't advance because this came up. You know, I had a client, one of the last ones I did out of Washtenaw. He worked as a mechanic, but he was a really highly talented mechanic, and it had been 20 years since his conviction had occurred. And he said he wanted to get a management position, but he couldn't. So we went in and we got his record cleared as before Judge Brown. And so now he's able to advance. And I'm like, there are like thousands of people like that with misdemeanors and felonies that, you know, they want to get jobs, they want to take care of themselves and their family, they don't want to be dependent on the system. But because the way the laws have been, it's an apartheid. I will always say this, you can see it on my videos too, America is like an apartheid system. It's American apartheid.
Right. We have yeah, in our justice system, it's American apartheid right here in the United States of America. I completely agree with you, Robyn. Well, we have just a few minutes left, and I want to get a chance to ask Francis about the Conviction Integrity Unit. Do you have very many cases at the moment? And you know, what's the threshold? You know, do people have to, you know, prove actual innocence, like in the Innocence Projects, or how does it work?
Yeah, so as we get started, we are saying, you know, if you are saying you are factually innocent, actually innocent on the facts, which is why I say factually innocent, then, you know, please write us, tell us your story, tell us, you know, give us information about your case and what your theory of innocence is. And, you know, most cases, if the person was convicted in Washtenaw County, and they are claiming that they did not do whatever they were convicted of, then we'll do a preliminary screening of that case. And I know, I mean, legally, you generally need new evidence of innocence to prove to the court. But, you know, from my experience at the Mid-Atlantic Innocence Project, when you're incarcerated, like, you don't have access to witnesses who might recant. You don't have access to the physical evidence. And sometimes the evidence, what we found in a lot of our cases, was intentionally or unintentionally not given over to the defense. And so when the prosecution or the police have not handed over evidence that might show the person is innocent, then how can we expect someone to already have that information when they write us?
Right.
So what we really want to know is just your story. Write to us. We will start digging to see what we have in our files, to see what information we have. and maybe from the law enforcement agencies, and we'll investigate those. We're not officially up and running yet, but the Michigan Innocence Clinic has referred a couple cases to us. We've had some people file like 6,500 motions, and if there's an innocence component to that, our unit will review that, even if you did not write to the Conviction Integrity and Expungement Unit specifically. And so we have a number of cases, and we're going to work with also the AG's CIU because I know they have some cases where people wrote to them from Washtenaw County as well. So we're going to collaborate with them as well.
Oh, fantastic. Well, that's very exciting. And I'm so glad to see that there's all this energy and synergy in Washtenaw County. It's very promising. So I congratulate you on your new position. And, I know you're the interim director, but hope and anticipate that you will become the full-time director of the CIEU. And what do you hope to see for these two units, in terms of your metrics within the next, 2 to 5 years? Can you make any projections?
In terms of projections, I think that's hard. Are
there goals for the unit?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of our goals is to, if we get permanent funding, we're hoping to get a more fulsome expungement program going. And Robyn, you mentioned working with law students, and that's part of our hope too, so that I can supervise the collection of records, and then a supervising attorney not in the prosecutor's office can supervise students helping people go through the application and hearing. Because as Robyn mentioned, there's much need for attorneys or student attorneys who can help under supervision. And so that's one of our hopes. And we really want that 6.5% number of people who have been eligible for expungement. We want to see that number grow exponentially, as I know you, Tracey, and Robyn, you both want to see that as well. And all the people who have been working so hard to get the clean slate legislation passed and in place. And so I think we really want to see that number hit a significant increase because, as that Michigan law study showed, people saw a 22% increase in wages just after the first year after expungement. And so we really want people to take advantage of the expungement laws, and we're happy to do whatever we can. In terms of conviction integrity portion, it's really hard to say. At the Mid-Atlantic Innocence Project, a non-DNA case took us 7.5 years to investigate, litigate, and get relief for somebody on average. And we worked often with the Baltimore City Conviction Integrity Unit. And when they got a case and were interested, they were able to get all the records right away because they had access. They didn't have records that were all redacted, so you couldn't even tell what the witness names were. And the fastest ones where they got a letter from someone who was incarcerated about him and his co-defendants. Within 4 months, there was an exoneration for those.
Wow.
That's
yeah, and
that's
so
amazing.
I mean, I would like in terms of metrics, I would like our process to be able to review a case that quickly. I mean, it shouldn't take 7.5 years of someone being additionally incarcerated. And part of that was just because, we would have to submit a FOIA request, and maybe a year later we would get a bunch of redacted documents. And
slow bills of justice. But now that was in another state though that was happening. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we worked in Maryland, DC, and Virginia.
I say that because Michigan is not known, it's one of the worst states in America when it comes to sunshine laws. The transparency is abhorrent. And I know that there is a movement afoot in the Michigan legislature to do better, to legislate improvement, because it's all part and parcel to helping free innocent people.
Yeah, and I mean, too, I was saying with the legislature too, about, I was talking back about expungement. When we talked to Representative LeGrand, he said that we could probably help 1 million people. It might be more. I mean, there's what, about 9 million people here in Michigan? We probably have to have the laws.
10,077,000 according to the US Census data that came out yesterday.
Okay,
But
That's
we're
right.
still losing
That's
a
right.
congressional seat. We're still losing a congressional seat
Yeah.
though.
okay. We need to redo the census. But Francis, I'm sorry, you were going to say something about conviction integrity.
Oh, I was just saying, I mean, where the FOIA and the Sunshine laws are not super expansive, I mean, that's where the counties, the prosecutor's office is having a conviction integrity unit is really important, because then you have someone who has access to the information, who can look through it, instead of, you know, the Michigan Innocence Clinic has done fantastic work, and they've been very successful, but it's still slow for them because of all these barriers. And so where there are conviction integrity units, they're able to get more access to information quicker, so that we can, you know, a lot of innocence claims can't be substantiated. And so you end up closing a case, but like, you shouldn't drag that process out for 5 years to then tell someone, well, we weren't able to find anything to prove your innocence, and so we have to close your case. You're really, I mean, even for that person, you're dragging it out. But where you can actually prove innocence, you know, making someone wait in prison for 7.5 more years until somebody looks at their case and can figure it out, it's just unjust. And so I really hope that the conviction integrity unit movement continues.
Yeah,
I do
agree.
too. Yes, and
and
anything that
kudos
we
to
can
you,
do to help,
Francis.
yeah, let
Yeah.
us know. But yes, it's been fantastic talking with you about your new position in Washtenaw County as the interim director of the Conviction Integrity Unit and the Expungement Unit. And I know for one, I know you join me, Robyn. I'm looking forward to hearing more about all of your great work. So again, congratulations. And I just think it's fantastic for Washtenaw County and all of Michigan.
Yes,
Thank you so
congratulations.
much.
I'm sure I'll be seeing you at some meetings coming up and talking about some of these issues. So yeah, welcome back. I know you were here before, so you're welcome back to Michigan.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, so this
Yeah,
is,
and if we can help with anything, please reach out.
oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Political Coffee with Robyn and Tracey, and our special guest, Francis Walters, who is the Washtenaw County Director of Conviction Integrity and Expungement Unit. And I have my mug slow down. Hopefully, I'll slow down. I don't know. I was a runner, so we'll see. So, you guys have a blessed evening.
Okay, great. Thanks,
Bye.
Robyn.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Robyn. Bye,
Thank you,
Francis. Keep
Francis.
up the great work. Keep
Thanks,
fighting.
Tracey.
Excellent
So
work.
nice talking to you.
Great
Yeah,
talking with
bye.
you too. Bye.